gotta remember to leave. Okay. Welcome to the Charleston Daily Mail's editorial board session with the 36th District Republicans and Democrats. We are the Charleston Daily Mail editorial board plus business editor Jared Hunt, who's providing coverage live over the internet, plus a story in the paper tomorrow. This process does help us with our endorsements, but it's also a great way for us to get to know you and for you to get to know us. So thank you for coming. Kelly, you want to say who you are?
Okay, I'm Kelly Merritt, editorial page editor of the Charleston Daily Mail. Thank y'all very much for coming.
Thank you.
I'm Don Silver, editorial writer.
And as you said, I'm Jared Hunt. Fill in whatever.
Reporter.
Normally he's the business editor. And I'm Brad McElhenney. I'm the editor.
And I'm Philip Maramba. I'm the managing editor.
Which way we want to start? Just keep on going?
Yeah.
Do you want a 2-minute spiel? Or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Vaughn Sizemore. I'm a Republican candidate. I have not ran before. I am a new face. However, I'm not new to politics. I have written legislation that is currently law. That legislators wanted legislation on a particular piece or a particular topic, and I wrote it for them. So I know how to write legislation, and I know how to fix legislation. I have an economics degree, and I understand that the economy in West Virginia needs a lot of things, and I know how to fix those things. I have a law degree, and for the last 14 years I've worked with businesses, both in general. I'm with the firm Bailey & White, but I work with businesses on a general counsel basis and in representing them when they're sued. But on the general counsel basis, I keep them in business based on the new and ever-changing regulations that they face. I'm well versed in the topics that are facing not only West Virginia, but the 36th district as a whole. And I will be a new face to change the way politics have gone in West Virginia for the last 83 years.
My name is Danny Wells. I'm a Democratic candidate for the House of Delegates. I was a journalist for a long time before I became a delegate in 2004. It's been very satisfying work in the Capitol. I feel good about what has been accomplished in the last 10 years in particular. And the things that have been accomplished in particular are successful privatizing of workers' comp and reducing taxes. We've done that, and we've passed solid mine safety legislation. And this past session, we passed a solid water bill that we all hope will protect our water from now on. And we also passed my bicycle bill, which makes it a little safer for people riding bikes along the road, because the vehicles must give them 3 feet as they pass them. So I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having us.
My name's Larry Rowe, and I'm an attorney in Malden. I live in the east end of Kanawha County, and I have my law practice there. And I'm also somewhat of a local historian. I'm very committed to the history that we have and the importance of it. I served before 2 terms in the House and 1 term in the Senate. I left the Senate in 2004, and in the next year, Governor Manchin adopted my sales tax proposal to reduce the sales tax on food, and that became law on a gradual basis. And I've had a number of other legislative initiatives, and I think that what we need to focus on now really is jobs. I think that's what we've got to focus on. It will help the state finances as we see revenues from gambling and other sources seem to be declining. We're going to have a pretty tight budget, and I think that I'm really privileged to serve from Kanawha County before, and I think it'd be a privilege to serve again in that district, which includes Kanawha City, the east end of Kanawha County, the west side, and then of course it goes south all the way out to 28. So I'd be privileged to serve those folks again.
I'm Nancy Guthrie. I'm running for a 5th term. It's hard to believe that we have. I think we've accomplished quite a bit in the time frame that I've been, as Larry said, privileged to serve. I don't think that it's an entitlement. I think that it is an honor to be chosen by the voters to serve. I think that the issues that I serve on the finance committee and agriculture. I'm the chair of the insurance committee, and in that capacity and in others, one of the things that I always try to do is to make sure that we try to pass legislation that is targeted towards alleviating the strain on the middle class that we are all experiencing. And I think we've made some inroads from reductions in the sales tax on food, reduction in business taxes. I'm not sure that we can cut anymore. What I think we need to do now is to try to figure out how to make investments in our communities. And I always use the north central part of the state as an example. When the smokestack industries along Route 79 closed up, that became a place that was fairly forlorn. And then Senator Byrd started making investments in that area. 20 years on, the north central part of the state has become the economic powerhouse. And so I think that to make a general assumption that if you make those kind of investments, that you do get a return on it is a fairly sensible way to apply government intervention in our economic diversity. And so I'm asking for a 5th term. As I said, I'm happy to be part of the conversation. I'm happy to be part, hopefully, of the solutions.
Brad White. I live in Kanawha City. I'm running for the 36th district of, which is Eastern Kanawha County. Got a wonderful wife named Lisa and 2 beautiful daughters. And why am I running? Because if we look at the state of our economy in Eastern Kanawha County, we talk about the growth up north. What about Eastern Kanawha County? We haven't had any growth. All we're getting is more and more job loss. And where's the people that represent those people? I think if you're a legislature, you need to be in the territory every day, serving the people, not a part-time legislature. You need to work as hard as you can. You are an elected official, and you need to serve many according to the Constitution. We the people, not me, or a few in those communities. And that's what I intend to do. Our water situation was atrocious. We should have stopped the session. We should have taken care of our state and dealt with the situation to make it better. We still do not have a secondary water source, to my knowledge. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs fixed, and a lot of people that I've talked to are unhappy, and basically that's why I'm running.
I'm Stevie Thaxton, Republican candidate, small business owner. I am a pro-life candidate. I am an adamant supporter of our Second Amendment rights, adamant supporter of our coal industry that I think is getting blindsided by a lot of the legislation and the EPA. Proud to be a pro-coal candidate because it directly affects my job as an electrical contractor. And I think we can do a lot more in the legislature for especially the small businesses. We're losing a tremendous amount of our small businesses in the state, and I think there's so much we can do to not only stop the loss, but to bring new businesses into the state, to get people off of the system and back to work. I think West Virginia needs a major change, and I would love to be a part of helping to make that change happen.
Go first.
Yeah. Go ahead or anybody.
The numbers appear to be very close as to whether the House will be a Republican House or a Democratic House. I'd just like your opinion. First part of the opinion, maybe a softball, but which way do you think it's going to go? And if it's a Republican House, how will that affect state government? If it's a Democratic House, how does that affect state government?
And will you vote for Harry Reid?
And will you vote for Harry Reid?
I think the House will remain Democratic, probably by more numbers than it is now. I'm optimistic that'll happen, and I hate to think what would happen if it didn't stay that way. I'd hate to see the return of the death penalty and who knows what else if the Democrats were in control of the House. But I'm optimistic that it'll stay. We have good candidates, especially in this district.
Brad, let me say, I hope it changes to Republican. And to address what Danny said, they've been in control of the House for 83 years. West Virginia is 50th in every single poll, unless we eke out and beat Mississippi and come in 49th. The proof is in the pudding, and they've been in control for 83 years. And if that's the type of success we want, and to continue on the same path, then I surely don't want to see the success in the future. So I hope the House changes. I would like to see Tim Armstead as the Speaker of the House. And one drastic change, if Tim Armstead is Speaker, I guarantee that every session will not start up to an hour or more late. Tim will run a tight ship and have things starting when they're scheduled to start, so those who are there to participate in the government and watch and hear what's going on will not have to sit around and wait for hours until the sessions begin.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Well, I hope that the 83 is enough campaign really picks up. It all has to do with the voters. We have to, I don't know if you want to say a lot of the voters are brainwashed, and I would blame this on anybody that votes a straight ticket, whether it be Republican or Democrat. I just think that's wrong on either party, because I think you do have good people in both parties that legitimately care about the people of West Virginia. The chore that the voters are given is to weed out who is good and who is bad. If hopefully common sense will prevail a little bit this election, and you can, just as Vaughn said, we're last in everything you want to be first in, and we're first in everything you want to be last in. After 83 years, if I couldn't sit here and say that everything is great in this state. And that's not the consensus that I get with my business getting to go all over the county and work. People aren't happy. But it's still, they've got the mindset that my dad was a Democrat or my dad was a Republican, so that's how I'm going to vote. So that's our biggest uphill battle, is we've got to get people out to get outside of the box. I mean, we've really got to let them know who we are, not what the party is. Because even as a Republican candidate, I could really care less about the party. It's got to be for the people. And I think the people have been forgotten over the past years.
I'm going to agree with Stevie. We do need, we're at a time now with our state, especially in the southern part of the state, where basically all the jobs are starting to move out. We are seeing the growth. Next 10 years, you'll probably see Morgantown and Martinsburg being the largest cities in the state. It's evident by the population decrease, the loss of jobs, and we've hounded on coal basically, and wind turbines not going to replace the jobs that the coal mines did. You can't take an economy that is based on coal mining and basically do away with it and expect our economy to survive. So we've got to have a two-party system that actually works together. I do hope that it changes for the better, and we get some people in there that are willing to work for the betterment of our state. But I think, like I said, you need to be on the ground. You need to be talking to the businesses. Myself, I built a small business from scratch. I employ people, and we've had to close an office because of some of the, you know, the taxes that hurt us. I mean, you're always, I mean, you've got all these certain costs, and you've got to every year go back all the time looking at ways to reduce costs for a business to make it more viable, where we can hire more people. But that hasn't happened with the tax system that we have. We need to revise that. But getting back to your question, we basically we need two parties that are working for the betterment of the people and betterment of the state, the whole state, not just the northern part of the state.
You guys in the middle haven't had a chance yet.
I really don't have any idea about the numbers and what the election will be. I don't see a groundswell of change in what I've observed, but I would point out, just from, you know, when you step back from it, having it was already mentioned that Tim Armstead would likely be speaker, having a Kanawha County delegate be in the speaker's chair would be something unusual for us. It's been many years since we've had that, and that of itself may be a benefit to Kanawha County. But I think overall the problem is that really, you know, I don't think at this point that the Republican Party has presented a program for West Virginia that would dramatically make the changes that are called for or suggested. And I think that's really a problem of leadership, and that may be changing. We'll see. But so far, I think that the fiscal leadership that we've seen, at least from the Tom administration and Governor Manchin, has been successful in this time period to keep us from being from instability in state government. But I think that it's something that it's changed. I mean, West Virginia is changing. It's going to change, and it's not something that we entirely control. We're subject to forces that are outside of West Virginia that are affecting us. The coal industry has changed for many years. We've gone from underground to a lot of surface coal. The number of jobs since 1950 is just dramatically reduced. So there are changes, economic changes, that we need to respond to, and I think that the current leadership can do that. They've done it so far, but new leadership is probably always a help.
I guess I would just add that if you look at the numbers, if Democrats get out and vote, we win. It's that simple. It's just a math situation, and for 83 years, Democrats have decided that they want Democrats representing them more so than they want Republicans. That's not my fault. That's up to the voters. And the truth of the matter is I think it's kind of cheeky to make decisions for the voters. Or it's like you seem to know better than the voters know. And for 83 years they've chosen Democrats over Republicans. Now, has that always worked? No. But it always hasn't worked either whenever we've had Republicans in control. But I agree with Larry. I think that once you get past the dog whistle yelling at each other, we've got some very serious challenges that we have to face. And we need to figure out, what do we do with a coal industry that is going to leave us all behind on carbon sequestration when other states are embracing it. What are we going to do to employ the coal miners who are going to be displaced because the industry doesn't want to embrace change? What they want to do is to, basically. I mean, these are people's livelihoods that are on the line. That's coal. We've got a whole bunch of other energy issues that we have to face. I mean, one of them is the oil and gas, the Marcellus shale play. Is how do we direct that so that it finally does some good for the areas where it's being taken out of the ground or where it's coming out of the ground and refined? How do we do that? Those are serious issues that take serious conversations as opposed to yelling at each other or calling each other failures. I think that's just an enormous waste of time, truthfully.
Getting back to the numbers, I also want to point out that what you already know, that the Republicans lost the strong candidate when Suzette Raines withdrew, and that could open up the door easily for Bobby Hatfield to get back in the House of Delegates. There's also, I can't think of his name, the truck driver up north who, his candidacy is being questioned because he violated the law by borrowing money from his girlfriend and not paying it back. A candidate can only borrow money from a family member, as I understand it. So he could be off the ballot also. So that gives us an advantage. And I want to point out something you also know, and that is a new candidate, a new delegate coming in. Nancy's on Finance Committee, and I'm on Judiciary Committee. And both are very important committees, and these new people coming in there, they got to work their way up. And the experience that the three of us have, I think, is a great thing in our favor.
Mr. White mentioned the water issue back in January. Remember that?
Oh, jeez. Very funny, Brad.
Still is involved.
I still.
His recommendation seemed to be that legislature should have stopped its work. Tell me if I'm wrong.
We basically did stop our work.
Yeah, I wonder, those of you who were on the legislature at the time, if the conditions were right for having fully considered legislation to deal with it, right in the middle of it, there was one night that was a horrendous snowstorm, and there was significant debate going on that evening. And I was watching on Twitter, which is what you do these days. I thought, those people are crazy. They need to go home.
We're not done yet either with that whole issue. The governor and the speaker put me on that water commission, and I think that some of the issues that Brad mentioned, I think are not only legitimate, but that I share his concerns. We did address the above ground storage issue, but we have yet to finalize where we're going to put, not if, but where we're going to put a secondary intake system, where and how we're going to put an alarm system in, so that people will know if their water is tainted before some calls the DEP and complains of a foul odor, if we're lucky enough to have an odor next time, or a foul taste. We can't be an economic powerhouse in this state and with a straight face say, come to West Virginia. We're friendly, we're chatty, we're very nice, we want you here, but yes, we have poisoned water. Now that's just stupid. And every industry in this state should be taking note that it's important to provide this fundamental service. And I think that commission will finally address that issue. Or at least that was the opinion that I was getting in our first meeting, which was just basically a formation meeting.
But why do we have to wait till a crisis to even figure out that we only have one source of water? We went through 9/11, and wouldn't you think the three things that we would worry about is our power grids, our chemicals, because we're known as Chemical Valley, and protect our water system. But no, we wait until we have a crisis, and our state's struggling the way it is. Most people in Eastern Kanawha County, due to your all's good work, is basically struggling to pay their bills every month. And now they've got to pay for bottled water they can't even use. So, it's unfortunate. And you look, you're trying to attract businesses and you're trying to give them incentives to come here. But you know what? Companies don't want to come here. They start looking at our educational system, the good work that you guys have done. And you look that we're ranked last in everything across the board. So, it's unacceptable for the people of West Virginia that we're in the shape that we're in. And they need leadership, and you know what? They need somebody that's willing to stand up for them and not vote straight party ticket like Stevie said. You know what? We need both parties going the same direction for the betterment of West Virginia. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to go back to single member districts. That way, you know what? You're not riding, party system like you're doing a class project. That way they know exactly what you're doing to represent people of Eastern Kanawha County.
I would like to add to that. We had no regulations relating to above ground water tanks anywhere, much less directly upstream from the major water intake for the entire major portion of West Virginia, including the capital city. If we look at the Mercatus Institute, West Virginia is ranked 49th for the most regulated business climate, but we didn't have a regulation dealing with above ground water tanks. Forbes magazine, even more than yet we ignore the major regulations dealing with health and safety there, and we worry about whether a bar can have a lighted sign behind the bar. We worry about, and when we get into the alcohol industry, there are a lot of regulations there. For example, Mountaineer Brewing has to ship its beer to Maryland to be bottled because it's against the regulations to bottle it here. We have a lot of job-killing regulations, but we don't have, or we didn't have, serious regulations dealing with the health and safety of our water intake. Some of these Homeland Security dollars should have immediately gone to securing the water source. When the tragedy, or when the spill happened, we should have immediately contacted the oil drillers who can run miles and miles worth of water intake and gotten a water intake above the spill or and went up into the canal river. It could have been solved quickly and alleviated a major part of the problem. And as for the water that passed, I think we're going to see a lot of problems when it's going to take a lot of work to figure you pass a major piece of legislation like that on the tails of an if we would have addressed it before the water spill, then we would have come out much better because the sweep that falls up in Mink Shoals, or we could have taken from the Canal River. And a big part of that is we closed down numerous water intake facilities throughout, making an interconnected web where from numerous different points when those facilities were shut down. So I think those are things that the legislature should concern itself with rather than writing a stack of regulations this high to deal with whether people can own bunny rabbits or tetra fish or any number of other dangerous animals like turtles.
Well, I'm extremely proud of the way the legislature handled the water bill legislation, and it came on the tails of an emergency on what to do but fix it. I will say I was a little more concerned with the fact that the water company wasn't aware of what was in the tanks 100 yards away than I was about the secondary source. Secondary source costs about $80 million. And if we can come up with that, I'm all for the secondary source. But the Senate spent about a week on that water bill, and I think it went to 2 committees at most.
Three. Went to 3 committees.
And then it went to us, and we spent most of the session on it. And I remember, I think, Brad, what you were talking about, a Sunday night, I was up in the judiciary until 2 in the morning watching that snow come down and knowing I'd never get up South Hills that night, and I had to get a ride with Brad, with Mark Hunt. But we worked that entire session on it. And I was a little concerned that the Senate might object to the fact that we changed so much, and we did, and they didn't. And we worked well together, and I think the House did a great job of fixing and adding solutions to the problem that the Senate didn't do at first. So as far as single-member districts, and we had 7 members in this district, and they knew who we were. They didn't have any trouble calling us. In fact, there's no reason to get that going again, but to think that a 7-member district couldn't take care of those people, and I think that's wrong. Thank you.
Real quick, I think something we could all agree on is we ought to feel very blessed that it didn't turn out worse than what it did. I mean, we could have had tens of thousands of dead bodies, right now versus what we had. But I'm like Brad, why do we wait until a situation happens before we try to fix it? Common sense tells you you don't put a deadly chemical beside 50 feet from a river to where we get our drinking water. I mean, that, to me, you know, EPA, DEP should have stepped in and made sure that didn't happen. Second off, if I keep a can of spray paint in my van, OSHA says I have to have an MSDS sheet on it. Well, I'd like to know how tens of thousands of gallons of unknown material got shut right by the river, and nobody knows where it came from, what it does, what it's made of, what effects it has. I think that ought to be one of the main points, is nothing comes across this state line unless we know about it. I mean, unless we have proper paperwork, what it's for, what it does, what it's made of, the health effects it could have. So it's a mess. It's a mess.
Who didn't get to talk? I got confused.
I'm not an engineer. A lot of these issues are things that I have to be educated on. But I certainly agree that we're very lucky that it wasn't worse. What surprises me, anytime I think about it, is why the folks who provide us with clean water, who have the responsibility for that, did not have any way of knowing that they were getting polluted water into the intake. I mean, I know government is supposed to regulate, and there was a failure of that. I just received a brochure from WVU, and there's apparently a study out from engineers there who said that it wasn't just a lack of regulation, it was failure to enforce regulations that we had. And that's on the regulators. But you also have to wonder why it is that the utility did not know if there was water, contaminated water going into the intake. That to me just seems like something that you would just assume to be true, and I think most consumers did assume that there was some effort by West Virginia Water to determine whether their water is clean or not. So I just add that to it. I think the legislature worked very hard and apparently did a fairly good job in coming up with regulations for the water condition. It doesn't mean that we're going to be guaranteed clean water. It's going to take a lot of people participating, the water companies and the consumers and everybody else, to make sure that we maintain clean water. It's vital. It's something we have to assume in order to function as a society.
We do not live in a third world country. I mean, you know what? We should have clean water here. That should have been, before this spill even happened, we should have had a secondary water source. Should have been taken care of. And that just goes to show you the state of our politicians, a lot of them that we have in the Capitol now, of having their priorities straight. We need to be taking care of things that take care of the people of West Virginia. And basically the southern part of our state is dying right now, our economy. And basically what we're getting is more and more dilapidated properties, more dependency, and more drugs.
Let me add, I agree with Brad and Stevie that single delegate districts are needed. I think the whole idea of one person, one vote, and having a delegate that lives near you, that works and might be walking down the street near you. When I knock on doors in the eastern end of the county, most of those people have seen their delegates walking in a parade, but none of them have ever walked up to their door and said, "Hi, I'm your delegate," or they're not regularly in the community to where they're accessible to these people. And even to the point where Stevie and I are relatively close together and neighbors. We would both be in the same single
Isn't
district.
that a year 2020 problem, not 2013?
Well,
That's
yeah.
when the redistricting is. What's the point of arguing that now? I don't get
Well,
it.
let me put it this way. We can redistrict at any time we want to, Danny, and just because you guys want to have 3 people with the Charleston-centric attitude to represent the people that are out in East Bank or Rand because they're not capable of doing it.
I don't know anybody that feels that way at all.
Well, I think that's the way it's been run for the last, 83 years. People from Rand and East Bank, and Larry lives down in Malden, so he'll represent that area if he's elected. But Stevie and I are neighbors, and I would be more than happy to battle Stevie in a primary for that spot. And if I got voted out of office because of single delegate districts, I would support Stevie all the way. because I believe that everybody should have a delegate that lives in their area rather than thinking only the rich people in Charleston can understand
Well, I'm not
what
rich,
the people are
and if
facing
you
down
ask
there.
the mayors of every one of those cities that you named up there,
Live down there rather than the mayors who are all Democrat mayors who's going to hold the party line all the way down the line.
no, I don't think they would, if they didn't approve of us.
Argument in favor of multi-member districts, like the United Front is that it?
Well, when we had 7, there was one key issue that was very beneficial. When I first got to the legislature, and we had community partnership monies that were available, what we all ended up doing was sitting down together, and we got a pool of money that we were able to do more with than each delegate had a allotted amount of money, like a private charity, because that way some of the issues that Stevie raises, or any of the rest of you guys raise, we were able to address some issues that the communities were saying were problematic or that they wanted changed. That was, to me, that was really the biggest reason. Plus, as a voting bloc, whenever Kanawha County Democrats said, because we had 7, and it used to be 14 at one point, Don?
No, it's 12.
I think at one point there were like 14. You know, at that point, somebody had to listen to you. You couldn't just roll over it, because you had 14 votes.
If you were single-member districts, but still with commonalities, something each of the single-member representatives wanted to unite on, couldn't that still happen?
I don't think it would. I think that everybody would be looking out after their own little district. And I think that's just common. I think that's just human nature. You know, I know that we've had people from a different part of the county. They've been very difficult to work with. They want us to help them with all of their projects, but they won't help us with the eastern end of the county. It just becomes very, I just think that when you're working together as a big group, there are more benefits than there are detractions. And to feel left out and left behind is something that is a complaint that I think has been ginned up by people who want single-member districts. And they want to be that.
It looks like you have something to say.
Well, you know, one problem you have with single-member districts is you have potentates. You look at Congress, there's no turnover. People don't, you know, there's very little change. I mean, you go, well, but change is available, but the reality of political scientists will tell you, the reality of single-member districts is that one person goes in there and stays for 40 years. I mean, that's the reality we have with Congress, with folks just not changing. People serving for 40 years. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, in Kanawha County, you can say several things. One of the things that's a real benefit is that you live in Kanawha County. Your library is downtown. You know, you go to the symphony. You do all kinds of things. You're part of it has an impact. Is it worse? You know, I don't know. You can argue either way on it, depending on the issue. But you know, a 3-member district, I think our delegation on the Democratic side really represent all the areas of the district. If I understand where Danny lives and where Nancy lives, Kanawha City and Southwest, and then, you know, I'm out in Malden. We don't have someone on the west side, but Mark Hunt was on the west side. So you have people who live in their communities, and they may be in the same district or not. But you know, it's something we'll just have to see how it goes. We've had one election where the districts are smaller in Kanawha County. It did seem to have some change, but we'll see what happens. I think you can argue either way on it, but I don't think I really don't imagine. I just don't think that that's necessarily going to all of a sudden help us. I think what we really need to do is to have a conversation on the positive end of life, and that is that in the future, we hope in the near future, the chemical industry should take off in the Kanawha Valley. And if that happened, it would be a different world for us. You say, well, what do we do to prepare? One thing is we need to prepare West Virginia State and West Virginia Tech to be technology partners with the chemical industry. We need the natural gas boom to have an impact on how we sell those properties that are available for major industry expansion. And the other thing that's really dramatic and is changing and very bright is the Boy Scouts. You know, I think it's, if I understand the numbers, in a few years we'll have the International Jamboree. We'll have 40,000 young people coming to West Virginia State. And you know, I've been to West Virginia, and number two, it's wonderful. It really is. We had so much fun. It was beautiful, and I hope that they feel secure that the water was clean and not drinking bottled water in Fayette County. But we can never put enough advertising or economic development or anything on the table that will match the impact that we can have on America with our image as we have with the Boy Scouts. And that is a future of West Virginia. Tourism development is absolutely essential. You know, and we talk about clean water, but we also got to have fish. We've got to have all kinds of things to make tourism development more meaningful. So I just point out those things that are bright sides. And if there's going to be change, and again, do we get to control that? Is that something that a legislator is going to control? No, we can help and encourage, but really there are forces out there, economic forces out there that we just have to hope bless us with increase in chemical jobs and tourism development.
Kind of leads into the question I want to ask. And I'm going to start and let's go.
As you ask, the fellows on the end keep leaning away from the camera.
Well, it's Kelly's
Yeah. Go ahead.
intense look on the question.
We talked about, you know, several people have mentioned jobs, of course. What is the role of the state of West Virginia in creating jobs? Let's start with you.
First off, we have to have a business-friendly climate. There's a couple things that I have to deal with, and I don't know how much the legislature will have to do with it. But first off, the generation, you know, I'll be 36 in a couple weeks. The generation behind me, they don't want a hands-on job. They don't want a construction job. Very few do. For me, with an electrical company, trying to find younger kids to try to train up, it's almost impossible. And it's getting even worse, even the generation ahead of me. A lot of them, you know, if they've got accustomed to, you know, unemployment or any kind of social entities that they can get. You know, it's, I use the explanation, it's hard for me to offer somebody, just say $400 a week for a paycheck when they can sit at home and make $350. You know, it's hard to get somebody out to work in the heat, the snow, and the rain, and mud for $10 extra a day. They're just going to, you know, tell you to shove it. What I looked, and this is a combination of federal and state, is I'm not rich by any means, far from it. But for what little bit I did make last year, for what I had to pay in taxes, I could have put 1.5 people to work. I mean, I'm not saying a master electrician, I couldn't afford a master electrician, but you know, I paid almost $30,000 in taxes last year. So I could have got an 18-year-old out of Carver that was wanting some experience, you know, for $10 an hour, and said, "Yeah, come and work with me. You know, we'll see how it goes. You can either grow with the company and stay with me, or you can, if you find something better, you can go." But it's, you know, with that money, I just had to give it away. So I would like to see, and Brad being a business owner as well, I'm tired of getting micromanaged. And one of my foremen told me the other day, he said, they have to break it up in little chunks. Every month you got to send in 941 employment taxes, and you got state taxes, you got city taxes. They said they got to break it up and nickel and dime you to death, because if they threw it all in one lump sum, you'd probably shoot yourself. so they have to do it a little bit at a time. But we need to quit micromanaging a lot of the companies. I think we need to instill a little bit of trust in our contractors and our small businesses. We need to get government out of the way a little bit. I think we need to lower taxes in any aspect that we can. There's a lot we could do, and it's nothing that's going to be changed overnight. And as we were talking earlier, even if the Republicans do take control, it's not going to be like a magic wand where the day after election, everything's going to get better. It's going to be a long, drawn-out process, and it's going to take everybody working together to make things in the state better. But I think those are just a few things that we could do. Not only, I've said for years, I'm not a fan of making the laws better for new businesses to come in. We need to take care of our businesses that are already operational in the state, because if we can show the outside world that, look at the West Virginia businesses, they're prosperous, they're making money, they're doing good, business climate is excellent, well then people's going to want to come in and see what's going on. I don't think we should throw the people that are already established and paying taxes, we shouldn't throw them under the bus and not include them in the new rules and regulations for the new businesses.
I'm going to agree with Stevie on that. Our business climate, being from the outside looking in, is not very friendly. We need to change our tax structure on that to incentivize companies to come here. Nothing from nothing's nothing. That's simple math. If you don't have the jobs and the companies coming here, there's no new employment, and that's what's happened in the past. The other thing is like Stevie said, we do need to take care of our existing business. Starting a business from scratch, it's very hard. Managed. And then you get your employees and you can't pay them a high salary. They're always looking to go work someplace else. So, we just need to incentivize more companies to come to our state and open up as well, but take care of what we've got. So I agree with Stevie on that.
I somewhat agree with both of these guys. I think that we spend a lot of time chasing after the big dream, the big business, but we haven't really put aside the necessary funds or the necessary investment that we could be making in our small business. I think it's important for everybody to pay their taxes. I'm not sure that Stevie should be paying more money than Milan Pharmaceutical, for instance. I think that those kinds of are things that need to be resolved, both at the federal level and at the state level. But I also think that as a West Virginian, I'm pretty proud to pay my taxes. I don't like it any more than anybody else, but I do know that if I didn't pay my taxes, I would probably go to jail. That'd be number one. But I'm a West Virginian and I'm an American, and to make all of these engines work, everybody has to pay taxes. That's sort of the common good. And one of the things that I have noticed is that everybody seems to want an exception. I think we can do more for small business, but I think that they need to be paying their fair share as well. And so, I'm happy to listen to how we can improve our regulatory environment, our tax structure for small business, but I also think that from the largest company to the smallest company, we all need to be responsible.
Well, I've already talked about the chemical industry and tourism, but we have to maintain an infrastructure. I mean, when we drive down roads that have potholes in them, we're in big trouble. Now, I mean, there's some things that we talk about assuming: clean water, a decent roadway, not necessarily new roads, which would be good and helpful into certain areas. New roads are great, but we've got to maintain the surfaces that we've got. That looks like that's going to be a real problem and a priority as you drive, especially as you drive around Kanawha County. I mean, we just patched all of the roads seem to be patched. You've got to have infrastructure. We've talked about water. You've got to have roads. The beauty of the chemical industry is that the infrastructure is already there. I mean, the plant sites are there. They don't have to get new permits. I mean, everything is in place. If people want new chemistry, new chemical industry someplace, this is the place. And so government's got to sell that. We've got to sell it in an appropriate way. Well, how do you do that? They're not just looking for roads and river transportation. They're also looking for libraries. They're looking for good, decent schools. I know all of the statistics that we hear are statewide, and we have a declining economy in southern West Virginia and some of the other rural parts of the state. And if you did those statistics based on Kanawha County and Monongalia County, I think you'll see that the numbers are pretty high. And Kanawha County has the chemical industry base that I'm hoping that we will see grow. So what do we need in Kanawha County? We need a library. We absolutely have to have good library system. We need a good school system. And I think higher education it's not been neglected, but I think higher education is changing. And there's an opportunity there for West Virginia State and West Virginia Tech to increase their numbers, for us statewide to export, if you will, more higher education. I remember when I was in school, people would complain about the fact that WVU had so many out-of-state students. And the response from the university was that, but we're getting so much money from them and such an increase in the local economy that it makes sense. Well, now, I don't know what the numbers are, but nobody's looking to see what the numbers are in Morgantown because it's all boom. I mean, it's just incredible boom. And that's something that affects the whole East Coast, helps our reputation, builds the infrastructure that's the tech park in Fairmont and Clarksburg. Kanawha County hasn't really had that lift. It's interesting. It's a historic problem of having higher education in the Kanawha Valley. We've got good higher education, but it's local. Has not been research based. It needs to be. That's what state and tech need to start doing. That should be their mission. We should be encouraging. I don't know how. We should be encouraging their chemistry department, their chemical engineering department to be the technology that has left us. When Union Carbide was bought by Dow, we lost an incredible technology group. A lot of the folks stayed and retired, but the technology part of it just went away. Those higher educational institutions have an opportunity in Kanawha Valley to be the technical partners for the chemical industry. Why would they want to come here? The natural gas, I mean, it's just set up. I think West Virginia State now has maybe 2 gas pumps on campus. I mean, natural gas gives us an opportunity to have cheap energy for any industrial expansion. And that's a high card. So I think that the future is much brighter than folks mean. And when we use statistics, I think we're using statistics on purposefully to show that West Virginia is down. I don't get the feeling of the statistical problem in Kanawha County in terms of roads and industry, wages, jobs, schools, and so on. Now, in other counties where the coal industry is in decline, it's difficult, and those statistics all go in with us. So I think what we need to do is to look at the bright side and to push West Virginia for its assets and its values, the people, the beautiful terrain, and industrial infrastructure that's always been here and is available.
I agree, but you know what, Larry, and I respect you. I mean, you have a good name. I totally respect you and I like you. But why is Eastern Kanawha County neglected? If you guys are the representatives, you haven't been in for a while. Why is it not neglected? Why didn't you guys fight for the people of Eastern Kanawha County to get some of the growth that's up there, to some things that get protected?
Well, I mean, it's the story of coal. I mean, coal and chemicals are there.
Right.
I mean, the east end of Eastern Kanawha County was built on coal. All of West Virginia was built on coal. When we put railroads through the southern West Virginia, there was nothing there at all. The railroads come through, and we produce coal. Towns and cities grow up. When coal goes, there's not going to be much left in southern West Virginia. Unless there's some new source or whatever. I mean, we don't have the industrial.
I grew up on coal. I know.
So
it's not a.
So, but that's something that's kind of happening to it. In markets, there's all kinds of things that go into the coal economy. But we were a booming coal producing area. It's less, and coal's being produced by many fewer people. I mean, when I moved to the east end of Kanawha County, most of the folks were retired miners. And it's just, we're at a point where those retired folks are leaving us. And so the numbers are down. I mean I really want DuPont to take off. I mean I think everybody does, and that would bring not just jobs, but I mean high-paying industrial jobs. We need that. So I think there's a number of problems, but I think that we can address those. And I would say if you look at and I can't give you off the top of my head all the changes that we talk about the Democratic leadership have done in terms of reducing business taxes and creating a friendlier business climate. I mean, there have been a number of changes in the last 10 years that have produced the kinds of changes that you all are talking about and that were needed. Looking forward, I think we've got to have an uplift in industry. And if not, we're going to continue to have the same old problems.
Just an uplift. I mean, one of the things that's been so demoralizing is that, we can all sit around and dwell on the past, but what Larry's talking about is the future, and that requires some thinking, which gets me back to my initial point, Brad. There are complaints. I hear a lot of complaints. I don't hear any ideas. What specifically, what are the
We
ideas?
almost got down
We've got about 2 minutes left for them to show their ideas, and then we have to end.
Well, the past usually predicts the future. I mean, that's pretty much common sense, Nancy. And we can't continue with what you guys have done this far.
Let's let Danny and Bob finish.
Well, everyone here certainly wants more jobs in West Virginia. I'm one of them, and all the reasons that have been given are good ones. The one that I didn't hear is when people want to move to West Virginia and work here, they want an outstanding education system. And I think that's very significant. And I encourage everyone to go up to see the new West Side School across from Edgewood. That's a good example. But and I also will say that and one of the things about making the education system better is by raising teachers' salaries. We're 44th or something, and teachers are leaving, and new teachers aren't coming in, and so there's more substitute teachers, I think there are, than regular teachers now. But lowering taxes, it's so easy to say. The two things I hear the most is lowering taxes and doing something with the tax structure. Well, I'm all for doing something with the tax structure, but I want you to tell me what to do with it. I'm not so sure I can be an expert on the tax structure. But lowering taxes is a wonderful thing, and we've gotten rid of the food tax and the business franchise tax, and I tell you that's a wonderful thing. I'm glad we did it, but it leaves some nasty holes in the budget. And as you know, our budget, we're having a hard time now with our budget, and I think this food tax alone was something like $60 million, and I don't hear any replacements for these tax reductions that we make. So, but naturally, I'll look for any way to bring more jobs into West Virginia.
All right, well, I have a lot to respond to. I have a pretty decent
memory.
memory.
About the single-member district, I predict.
Okay, let me start with, as I hear the Democrats talking, I hear Larry and Danny almost sounding like conservatives, and Nancy is espousing a Keynesian economic system that John Maynard Keynes would have found an aberration. Keynesian economics has never worked, particularly on the state level. I hear, well, yeah, we need to lower taxes and this and that. The business property tax, the inventory tax, is crushing businesses. And on the statewide statistics, if we look while these two have been in office over the last 10 years, we have lost 14% of all small businesses in the state. That is 4,000 businesses. Now, if we want to take it down to the county level, over the last 20 years, Kanawha County, if you take the adjusted gross income of everybody in the county, we have lost $550 million of income. Almost $500 million has disappeared from the Kanawha County. During that same time period, our state budget has gone from $6 billion to $22 billion. the issue of cutting taxes isn't how are we going to pay for everything. It's why is the government so involved in so many things that it doesn't have any business being involved in. When we look at, we need to fill potholes, we need to keep the roads in good repair. Well, right now, the entire budget for transportation is coming from the gasoline tax. And as gas gets more expensive, it automatically raises, which causes people to use less and less gas. And with the CAFE standards, which are requiring better and better gas mileage, hybrids, and eventually natural gas vehicles, we're going to lose that tax system to keep the roads in good repair. We should move the funding for transportation to the general budget and let our legislatures say, I want to spend this rather than fix this road. So it is a debate over good roads or whatever pet project somebody wants. When we get to education, West Virginia is number 22 on the per pupil spending out of 55 or out of 50 states, or 57 states to some people. But out of 50 states, we are 22nd. Yet our teacher pay is around 50th. That money's going into a sinkhole somewhere. Beautiful new schools, a hierarchical system for both on the state level and the county levels are great for some people, but it is not translating down to the classroom. To put icing on the education cake, we have adopted Common Core. Common Core is, I believe, a violation of Article 1, Section 2 that everyone here has taken an oath to uphold. Article 1, Section 2 of the West Virginia Constitution defines what the federal government is. It is a government of enumerated powers. It defines that the state and its people keeps everything else. And it is the highest and utmost duty of every elected official in West Virginia to guard against any encroachment by the federal government or any other source on the rights of the state and the people of the state. And when we give our education system away to the federal government and say, Department of Education, tell us how to teach our kids, not only are we taking trained professionals in the classroom and telling them, you know, you need to do this, 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 and this, and giving them a checklist on what exactly they are to do and not letting them teach, but we're also giving away state sovereignty to the federal government and asking the federal government, what do we do next? We've done that for years and years, and it is having a bad effect on our schools. On the higher education system, we need to look more on the output rather than how many kids we can send to college. We need to quit telling every student, you must go to college to succeed. If we had a more vibrant vocational and technical training programs on the high school level, even dipping down into middle school, kids who have no interest in college, rather than telling them you can't succeed unless you go to college.
We do have that. We do have a very strong vocation.
May I finish? You don't have a strong enough system. In the last 10 years while you've been in, we've lost 14% of our businesses. We have a need for welders. If we had a more vibrant program where businesses and unions would volunteer to get to come in to teach these students, number one, so they have the best pick of students, and number two, for the union, so they can have potential future union members. If we look at expanding that vocational and technical training, a kid coming out of high school with a basic welding certificate is going to make more than over half of the college graduates. All of the trades are going to do well. And to expand that even further, for the last 12 years, I've worked with the most effective welfare to work program in the country. They move people through a 2-year process. They teach them not only how to get up and go to work, but train them in a job that they are interested in doing in the future. And on average, people leave that program making $15 an hour. We need to expand that throughout the state, not only through dollars, but through tax incentives to businesses to hire these people while providing the training. But if we look at the state spending compared to Tennessee, where there's 6 million residents, Tennessee spends $6 billion, which is what we were spending in 1990, and they get much better bang for their buck than we do for $22 billion.
This has been great, so
Yeah.
great that we've gone over.
Yeah, to wrap it up, so,
Oh,
thank you. Just-
yeah, sorry, I thought you were gonna say another question.
No, I'd love to, we could go on and on, but,
Yeah.
thank y'all very much. We do.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this will be archived, where will this be archived?
The Capitol